over it, Mr. Anderson. We are in the train sequence after all. If you're like me and always craving a new fun action, intense, fuel-packed beat-em-up, then Midnight Fight Express is definitely a game you should consider playing. It is your typical run around, beat the crap out of everybody you see type game, kick them across the floor, fighting your way through hordes of enemies to go to the big bad and take him out, picking up and using any weapon or object you find along the way. And speaking of which, this game has 100 different weapons to use. Each one has a different style attack animation, fatality-like finisher moves on standing and grounded enemies. The developers definitely spent a lot of time making sure they could keep the fighting diverse enough to remain entertaining throughout, which they definitely delivered on. This kind of reminded me of back in the day playing Mortal Kombat and trying to figure out and see each fatality the game had hidden in it. Having said that, however, there's nothing quite like repeatedly foot stomping on this guy's baby-making marble sack. The stages are pretty varied, with some subway underground type stages, alleyways, clubs, dockyards, pubs, boats, and of course it wouldn't be a proper beat 'em up if there wasn't the classic elevator stage with samurais in it. There's also a neat looking stage where you beat up the game devs in it by thwopping them in the head with pillows. Obviously, being a beat 'em up, there's gonna be bosses, and the bosses in this game weren't too tough, where they become a chore and annoying sometimes. Most fights had so many weapons that you can just run around throwing stuff at people and generally be okay. There were a few trickier fights that took some figuring out though, like this harvester grinder lady scorpion trying to mush us into human pate. I thought originally you had to throw these fire barrels dotted around the battlefield, but turns out being shot through the little windshield to the head multiple times ends the fight a lot quicker. In your hideout, the place you'll be hanging out between stages, you can choose whether to continue the story or replay previous levels. Each level has extra missions you can complete to unlock new enemies to play, or to get new clothing to buy and equip. The most refreshing thing I actually found in this game was the fact that there was no loot boxes, no MTX, no credit card purchases. A real throwback to the old school games of our past. You know, games like Tekken 3 that you would play over and over again to unlock all the characters and the game modes, and had fun doing it. You don't have to have real money transactions for a game to do well, and this is a clear example of that, and it's nice to see. You can unlock and play as any enemy in the game. You can also play as all the bosses of the game, providing you complete the required challenges. Every time you beat a stage, you'll unlock a talent point, and you can use these points to buy different skills of different types. You've got your melee skills and gun skills. You also get a rope later on in the game that you can use to drag enemies to you. There's also parry techniques, disarm moves. There's also wrestling moves as WWE choke slams and German suplexes, which adds a lot of variety into the way you take down your opponents. There's a nice little game mode called the Playground, and in the Playground you can select enemies to spawn with weapons or without weapons and try out your newly purchased techniques. You can also pimp my drone and change the color of the drone that follows you. And finally, the overview page that shows your achievements and things like that, and your statistics of how many enemies you've killed and how long you've played the game. There's a really good spread of enemy types in this game. Most beat-em-ups just recycle the same enemy over and over and over and over, but I can't say I ever remembered playing a game where you're in a monastery with AK-47s shooting crack-dealing, Bible-worshipping drug lord bishops. As for the music, it was kind of like Mother Russia Bleeds, that cranky, skanky, club, rave, drug-ridden style. I don't know what you would call it. But it did a good job of balancing between the more hard-hitting songs and the more mellow, driving through California in a Ferrari in the sunset style. And that's the end of my review. So I'm going to just give my short summary now. The combat was fast-paced, similar to the Batman Arkham games, with a good mix of different styled attacks. The enemies had good diversity in colour, hairstyles, clothes, weapons, and body types and shapes. The bosses were fun. There was a funny strip club stage where everyone's wearing almost nothing but a string up the Arizona Ridge. Music was banging. The graphics weren't super detailed, but clear, which is always more important to me. There were some settings I had to turn off because of brightness issues, and my eyes not doing well with bright lights in general. It wasn't on the level of Fight and Rage, wake up on the floor in your own spit type flashing, but it was enough for me to turn it off. Stage variety was on point, maybe a few too many train-themed stages. The challenge unlocks are fun to do, and helps with the game's replayability. And the story... Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the story. There is a story. The story is basically the same as Hotline Miami. You're a guy, you wake up, you don't know who you are, you go on a revenge killing spree, and find out who you are. The end. 9 out of 10. Definitely a certified Bills banger, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did.